Welcome to At the Helm with Adventure Man Dan. Let's start the adventure. Hello and welcome to the third episode of At the Helm with Adventure Man Dan, the podcast where I talk about all aspects of the adventure lifestyle. I am so very honored for you to be joining me here today on the 26th of October 2020. I'm recording from my editing station aboard my sailboat Adventureborn, currently docked in Fort Pierce, Florida. Alright, so today I'm going to be talking about my current adventure plans and goals for 2020. In the past couple of episodes, I talked a little bit about what I've done in the past, so in this episode, I want to take a minute and talk about what I'm doing now, what my current plans are, what my goals are, and what I've got planned for the rest of 2020. Alright, so getting right into it, where I am right now. Yes, I am docked up at a marina. I know, cue all the booze for a not-so-adventurous living arrangement at the moment. But for where I'm at in life, it's a really good place for me to be, and I'm going to dive into a little bit as to why. But first, I'm going to back up to July of 2019, when I came back from sailing in the Bahamas, and was pretty burnt out, to be honest. Now, if you've listened to my first episode of the podcast, I go into quite a bit of detail about how I was sailing for 9 months and why that was. But long story short, I came back to the US and I had some things on my boat that needed to be taken care of. A myriad of reasons. Least of all was the fact that I just needed a break. Solo sailing and having as little experience as I did proved to be fairly stressful. Enjoyable, but stressful. So I did need to go to a marina. Particularly with summer approaching, I knew I did not want to stick it out in the Florida summer heat and humidity especially. That would have been pretty brutal. My options were to get a generator and an air conditioner and strap that to my boat and be anchored somewhere, and kind of started doing the math, and then also just the realistic aspect of it. I decided, you know what? I've sailed my boat. It's time for me to start doing some refitting, so a marina is where I gotta be. Particularly one that was close enough to returning back to the Bahamas or going even further back into the Caribbean. That's why I didn't decide to go up further north. I didn't want to have to make the trip all the way back down. It was still within shot of hurricanes. As well as I kind of discovered later, it's really nice to be able to fairly freely go into the ocean all year round. Not something I'm used to, really. Not without having to put on a very thick wetsuit. Although the Florida winters does get a little cold, it's nothing compared to what it does up further north. I'm originally from Vermont in upstate New York, and I know what winter can really be like. So being down here is still really nice. So, alright, I needed to pick an area, and I was looking at where I could afford to keep my boat. It pretty much seemed that all the Florida Keys, all the way up through Miami, West Palm Beach, was incredibly expensive, which led me to the Stewart area. Stewart, Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, and Vero Beach as well. This little section of the coastline called the Treasure Coast of Florida seemed to be a good place for me. I brought my boat in, checked back into the US, all back in 2019, and then from there I started looking at marinas. I think I looked at 3 or 4. One was a total junkyard. Some people probably know the one I'm talking about without even me mentioning it, so I'll leave it out. And a few were very, very nice, and honestly kind of felt a little too nice. I wanted a place that I could be able to do my own work and not receive any backlash from the owners or the management. The marina I ended up going with also just so happens to have a brand new 70-foot pool, which I do love, and I'm in it probably 5 times a week at least. As well, they have a gym that I've been able to add some equipment to, get some workouts in, and kind of give myself a nice lifestyle. And again, going back to it, I don't like the idea of being in a marina. It really is where boats go to die, so to speak. I'll just be here for a few months, turns into a few years, and so on. And I hate to admit it, but that has somewhat happened to me. I was set to sail out this past March with crew members, but then COVID hit and really locked things down. It was just looking a little scary to sail away before things had kind of stabilized. I eventually did get a month of sailing into the Florida Keys, without really ever going to shore, which was really nice. But then did have to come back. So here I am yet again. I've just completed another summer, in the, Florida heat with the air conditioner on my boat, which does prevent me a bit from sailing, but it's well worth it just so I can be comfortable. And the reason for that comfortability is so I can focus on doing online and editing work. I have about 4 or 5 terabytes of video footage, photos, drone shots, GoPro shots, you name it, from the last 6 years. And it's high time I start editing that, and that's kind of what this time is for me. This is a perfect time where I'm not actively on a continuous, sailing or traveling adventure, where I can just focus on what I need to do, which is to edit. Now, of course, there are other distractions here. Because I am in Florida, I do have to watch out for hurricane season. Last I looked, there's no hurricanes on the horizon that are coming our way, and we're pretty much in the clear as far as I can tell. My first year here in Florida, we had Hurricane Dorian smash through the Abacos in the Bahamas and was threatening, the eye of the storm was going to come within a half mile, I think, of my boat, which led me to a kind of interesting rule, which is I don't do my refitting in the summer at all. And yes, because of the ridiculous Florida heat, but also because of the idea that if I put in all this work, all this money, all this time, and especially all that sweat, and then a hurricane comes and just slaps my boat. My boat is not that expensive. It would take me about a year, but I could easily enough go out and get another boat like the one that I have here. I really bought a budget boat, and it does need a few things to it, but that was a big reason for me coming here. A good place for me to wait out hurricane season and get some work done. Internet access is pretty good here. Get all my Amazon packages, which is just absolutely amazing. I don't have to worry about, some newbie sailor anchoring right next to me. There's not as much chaos here. A really big reason to be at a marina is my boat won't drag at a marina. It's really, really nice to be able to have that. I can have lazy days where I just do absolutely nothing. I feel like when you're anchored, you can still get those in, but you don't have as much say in when those are. Usually I try to take Sundays completely off to just kick it and relax. And then probably one of the other biggest reasons is this gives me a chance to get a bit of a mental break in between my adventures, a chance for me to slow down, catch my breath, relax, and so on. But being at a marina isn't without its downsides. The first and most major one being the cost of the money just to be here. Now, before I had come here to where I've lived, I hate to say it, but I've lived here for a little more than a year now. Not very adventurous, I know. But anyway, before I'd come here, I had actually paid to be at one other marina when I checked into the Bahamas. And before that, I think I had paid to be on a mooring ball in right off of New York City, which was pretty great. It was like $25 a night. And then before that, one other mooring ball off of Cuttyhunk Island, or right in Cuttyhunk, I should say. So kind of give you a perspective that when I was sailing, I was dirt cheap, anchor out constantly. And I really do miss that. And I definitely save a lot more money. So it's a really big con for me being here is spending money, but I do get, those other comfortabilities that does come with it, which I actually wrote down here in my downsides to being in a marina. Getting comfortable. It's really easy to become lazy in here, to just kind of let the days fly by and not really notice what's going on. I try my absolute best to stay on a schedule, write down all my goals, and I'll talk about those a little bit later here, of which I have many. But yeah, you got to be a little careful when you're at a marina. It's very easy, you just go to walk down the dock to go do something, get back to your car, whatever, and your neighbor Bob is like, "Oh, hey, what's going on today?" And, an hour has passed, and you shot the breeze with him. So I made it a bit of a habit as soon as I got to this marina, in the most courteous way I could, kind of say hi and keep walking. They'd be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" "Good, bye, see you later," as I would go, just because I don't want to, fall into that habit of spending a lot of time just talking and shooting the breeze. Another downside of being here at the marina is that I do feel like I've fallen out of a lot of my habits as being a sailor and a cruiser. The simple ones that just become a muscle memory, I don't really have as much anymore. They're easy enough to come back, like when I went down to the Keys this year. It really wasn't too bad, but it is something I do worry about, and is reason why I sail out as soon as I can, just for day sails or multi-day sails, just to keep myself sharp with everything going on. The boat sitting here at the marina also develops growth. That's another pretty big con to it. I don't run my engine as much as I somewhat would. Normally when I'm out sailing, I'll probably run my engine, I don't know, maybe a couple times a week. I really enjoy sailing on and off the anchor, but the long story short is the engine gets run as much as it should and gets looked at every single day. I simply don't do that here. It's a bit of a downside as well. And really the biggest downside for all of you at a marina on a boat or going to be in the situation that I really worry about is that I might look back and regret how much I've stayed at a marina. I think that I'm not a huge risk for that, but I think there's definitely been a lot of other people who have stayed at a marina way longer than they intended to, for years, maybe even. And that's something I really want to avoid if at all possible. Which in a little bit I'll go into where I'll be going to get the heck out of here soon. So moving on to the next category, another thing I've been doing while I've been here, on the Treasure Coast area is being able to hang out with the same friends instead of traveling away from them. I know that sounds pretty simple to most people, but for me over the past, 5 years or so, maybe a little bit less, I've made a lot of really, really great friends, very intense connections over a short period of time, and then had to say goodbye because I'm moving on, they're moving on, we're moving in different directions. From when I was backpacking for more than a year around the world, the RV trip I did all the way up the West Coast, the van trip across the country, sailing for 9 months straight, you meet a lot of great people, but then you just got to say goodbye. And it's been really nice being here, being in one place, developing a friend circle, support network, and being able to see those people over and over again. Again, I know it sounds super simple and super basic, but it's one of those things I've really missed. And I'll definitely miss them when I leave. I've told all of them, they've got a golden ticket to come see me wherever I go. But it's been really enjoyable. I do a weekly D&D session. I go kiteboarding constantly with friends, or I just did a kiteboarding trip, or I'll go paddleboarding with them, go to the beach, whatever. But it's nice being able to have some more people to relate to instead of just sailing and always being isolated. So that's a really nice thing. And that kind of segue me to my third topic here of what I've been doing lately, kiteboarding. Yeah. I picked up another, unfortunately expensive, but incredibly fun, extreme sport, adventure sport, whatever you want to call it. But kiteboarding is fantastic. The Treasure Coast has a lot of areas, though in a westerly wind and a few other directions, not the best, but for the most part, especially in the wintertime, we get a lot of northeast wind here, which is great along the coast. Do some downwinders, go off of the jetties, wherever. And those of you that aren't familiar, kiteboarding is a relatively new sport. Effectively, we are flying these large, I generally fly a 12 square meter kite. They're capable of lifting us up. Lifting me up, I think my friend said I've gone maybe 22 feet up, but other people have done, I think 100. So some really, really cool things that can be done with it. At the end of my cruising season in 2019, I had the idea that I would pick up a sport. I was going to do windsurfing. The idea being that when there's no wind, I go spearfishing. When there's a little bit of wind, I go sailing to the next location. And when there's a lot of wind and I can't do either of those past two things, or I don't want to, I go kiteboarding, or in that case, windsurfing. I got here to the Treasure Coast, made a friend really quickly who was kiteboarding, and there's just way too much gear involved with windsurfing. The conditions that you can't go out in, or that you just don't get the wind correctly in. So anyway, one thing led to another, but I've spent, since December is when I started kiteboarding, and you'll start seeing a lot more photos and videos from it. When I went into the Florida Keys this past cruising season with Alicia, she was a much more experienced kiteboarder than me. And thankfully too, I had her on the trip because my kite went down, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had a kite to use that trip. So it's a ton of fun. The places you can do it in are unreal, and it's a whole different adrenaline high. I love spearfishing nothing will ever take away spearfishing for me. That is still always going to be my number one, passion and hobby. But the idea, of this very quiet, soothing meditation as you're preparing to free dive in the water, going down, and then bam, you got that instant adrenaline rush of hitting the fish and it pulling you around, bringing it up, getting dinner. It's a great hobby, a great high. But probably what I felt was missing was back when I lived in California, probably more like 7 or 8 years ago. I lived in Santa Cruz, California, and would go surfing. I don't think they were quite considered to be big wave surfing, but 10 and 12 foot Pacific waves was a ton of fun. That really big, overwhelming wave, pardon the expression, but wave of adrenaline that would run over you. Sometimes literally would really just, I loved it and I missed it. Kiteboarding somewhat gives me that back. Surfing really is its own high in every way, and I really do miss it for that. But you need very particular circumstances, conditions, locations, as well as the board. Kiteboarding is great because I'm already going to be in windy places, generally speaking. And it just helps fill in that gap. When there's no wind, I'm spearfishing. When there's some wind, I'm sailing. When there's too much wind, I'm kiteboarding. And when I say too much wind, just to kind of give you guys an idea, I would say probably around, it depends on the location, but around 10 knots, certain places get really, really murky. I don't actually mind the actual movement of the ocean. It doesn't really bother me anymore. But just the water visibility gets really bad and the fish kind of scatter from the shallower areas. And for my sailboat, I'm not a huge fan of, if I can avoid it, I don't really want to go sailing most days when it's over 20 knots. And then with kiteboarding, if I can help it, especially with the new kite I just got, which is a 9-meter kite, I would love to be kiteboarding in 20 knots plus of wind. That is a really good time. So this next cruising season, in 2021, I'm hoping will really fill it out for me. I've already done kiteboarding, spearfishing, and sailing together. I already kind of have a good baseline of it, so I'm hoping to just build upon it and improve on that. And the last thing I'll say about kiteboarding that I really, really enjoy and I haven't had in a while is the camaraderie around it. One of the places I like to go in Fort Pierce has one of their jetties, and there's a local crowd there. Most of them are well over 50. It's kind of funny. I'm, again, the youngest one there. Really nice guys, though. If I ever have a question, I can always just ask them, and they'll give me advice on kiteboarding, what I could be doing different, what I should be learning on, and so on. But when I go out sailing and cruising, it's a different type of camaraderie. You meet up with them briefly, but the sailors that you meet out there, they're not on the boat with you. When I go spearfishing, they're not in the water with me. So I really enjoy that camaraderie that comes with kiteboarding. It's a ton of fun. Just got to do a trip recently. I went up to the Outer Banks of North Carolina with a couple buddies and just had a great time, minus me losing a GoPro 8 in the water. That's fine though. No, it happens. Yeah, it happens. But no, it really is a fantastic sport all around. Keeps me in shape in ways that kiteboarding and sailing do not. Keeps me, in my reflexes very quick. Really, the main downside is just how friggin' expensive it is. It is not a cheap sport. I really hate that. Not only that, but my main spear gun is a Rife Euro 120 in close track. I bought that back in San Diego. Probably 5 years ago, and there's no sign of me, replacing it necessarily. Not for its particular uses. I might get a different spear gun, a bigger one or even a smaller one. But the idea though is that spear gun has shot so many fish, done so much, versus with kiteboarding, man, a kite can only last you a year depending on how much you use it. And a kite can cost, $1,200-$1,400. So yeah, it's a bit of a downside. So again, trying to balance all that and, make it all work together. But anyway, on to the next sort of topic of things that I'm doing while I'm here, docked up in, the Treasure Coast. It's probably the biggest one is, finally organizing and editing and publishing all of my backlogged footage from the past 6 years. So again, I'm doing this all while it's nice and hot out. I don't really want to be just cooking outside doing work or anything else. I have an air conditioner, which unfortunately I can't run while I'm editing, so I'm starting to sweat a little bit here. But yeah, so being at a marina gives me consistent electricity. I don't have to check my batteries every 2 seconds. I have to make sure my solar charge controller is working and this and that. It is very nice to just plug in and just forget about it and be on a laptop all day doing the work that I need to. Now I've got a lot of goals, as it would be though, for things to get done. My YouTube probably being the biggest thing that I'm trying to get back up and running. I recently released a channel trailer, put a lot of work into it, and my YouTube channel definitely needs time to kind of wake back up, as I think I went 3 or 4 years without, I think it was 3 years without posting a video, which is way too much for any platform. But from now on, I'm going to be producing special content every Tuesday. That means I'll be releasing a podcast on one Tuesday and then staggering it with a new YouTube video on the next Tuesday and going back and forth like that. So every other week you'll have a podcast and every other week you'll have a YouTube video. And a quick plug on that. This Tuesday I'll be releasing this podcast, but next Tuesday, November 3rd, I'll be releasing the first of a 12-part series. I'm calling it my Epic Mentories, as in an epic documentary. And this 12-part series is all of my backlogged footage. It is my attempt to get out all of my content, tell my story, and get it done and over with and be able to be producing content on a more timely basis. The 12 different chapters will all cover a different area from when I first got a GoPro, which I consider to be sort of the inception of my online persona, Adventure Man Dan and such. And that was all the way back in 2013. And then moving all the way forward as I go into Southern California, into Baja, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, the Alaska trip, learning to sail the van trip, and so on. Again, kind of, if you listen to my first podcast episode, it'll be all of that, but in a video. So there's really great footage in there. And that should, if I can get it done fast enough, bring me all the way up and finally be caught up and no longer have this looming, all this footage over my head. And it's also a little bit tough because as I still go out on just a daily basis, I still create more content. So I'm trying to kind of balance the two of those. But anyway, so here I am at a marina, docked up, doing all this different video editing. Not just that, obviously I'm making the podcast. I'm working on, I've made a website since then. I'm working on getting the Instagram a little bit more consistent. That's a platform I know a lot of people like to see me have a bigger presence on. I certainly have the photos for, I just need to work on it. And then the Facebook page, the Adventure Man Dan Facebook page is probably the one I've been the most consistent on. And that one I just have a lot of good habits for posting. And the other day I got done organizing and I realized I have 210 posts that I can throw up online right now. So I'm going to be scheduling those. So from now on, you're going to see basically a post every single day, 6 days a week, and just in order to get my content out there, because I have so much backlogged. But 6 days a week, I'm going to be posting to the Adventure Man Dan Facebook page. And then on Tuesday will be the only one that's not necessarily a post, but more of a share for the latest podcast or the latest, YouTube video going out there as well. So this is a major endeavor for me. It's very difficult for me to just sit in one place and do the work, but I'm taking the time. I've even done work on my boat to make an editing station out of my navigation station. So I can be doing all these things, and it's a major goal of mine that I will achieve. It's just gonna take a little bit of slowing down and maybe not going on every adventure that crosses my path. So anyway, moving on to sort of the fifth category I've got down, refitting inside and outside for my boat once the weather gets cooler. It's not just the hurricanes, it's definitely the heat. I don't really feel like sweating too much when I have so much online work I need to be doing. So I have quite an extensive list that's all very important. Inside and outside the boat, probably the biggest ones still are to be done outside the boat. Again, to make this sailboat a world cruising boat, one that I'm, more comfortable to live in 24/7, 365, out at the anchor. That really is the goal. Yes, I've somewhat already done that. For 9 months when I was sailing down the coast and around the Bahamas, but I really want something a little more comfortable and a little bit sturdier. So to kind of just give you an idea of some of the projects, probably the biggest one I have coming up is I plan on making a Bimini hardtop superstructure with bent aluminum, probably a few welds put in there, as well as I'm going to glass over my Dodger, make that into a hard Dodger. And that will more or less somewhat connect back for one full structure going all the way back to the dinghy davits as well. This will give me several benefits. It'll give me more stability to hang more things on there. Should it be boards, hooks to hang a swinging captain's chair, something I want to do for a long time. And I've done the measurements out, and if I do it correctly, I should also be able to get 2 Brazilian style hammocks right there into the cockpit, which would be a really nice thought to be off sailing and, just kind of holding the helm from a hammock, and you're heeled over on the boat, but the hammock's not going to know the difference at all. So that'd be a pretty cool feeling. I definitely need a new jib and probably could use a new mainsail. The jib is completely done. I've sewn it, patched it, done everything I can. It's very blown out and it's just time for a new one. The mainsail really isn't too far behind, but if I'm getting a new jib, it's just time. It's time to get a new one. So I might go new depending on the price, or I might go with a used sail from one of the sail lofts, probably up around Annapolis. They have quite a bit of selection up there from what I know. Another main project would be getting a better dinghy. I now understand how much time I spend in a dinghy, or how much I need a good dinghy. I've had several that were very leaky, and then Alicia, my last crew member, was very generous, and she bought a very nice rigid hull inflatable dinghy for the times that we were sailing together. So she'd take that with her. I don't get to keep it. No. So looking from what I got out of that dinghy with her, and it was a pretty big dinghy. But looking at what I got from that dinghy, it kind of gives me a sense of what I want out of my own dinghy, what I'm going to be spending that much money on. I probably will go rigid hull inflatable. I would love for there to be a good option for a dinghy that I can get in and out of easily, that's not inflatable, because I just hate the idea of it popping. If you have any suggestions, ideas, please feel free to reach out and message me. I am all ears. As well, I'll probably go into the Bahamas and make a quick stop over at Nassau to buy one of those amazing 15 horsepower two-stroke Yamahas, little dinghy motors. Right now I have a 6 horsepower, and I can't get more than 2 people up on the plane with any dinghy. It does not matter. The Yamaha 15 horsepower two-stroke is virtually the exact same size and weight. It just has nearly 3 times the amount of power. So that'd be a really good thing for me to get into. Along with the superstructure going up, I also plan on doing some work and putting in a little more solar. I have 700 watts right now. Probably around 1,000 to 1,200. I would be completely set. What I'd probably get even more use out of, though, honestly, is a bigger battery bank. I think I have 360 something amp hour of between 2 very large AGM batteries. And a solar charge controller that is not quite up to snuff. That was a learning lesson for me, although I didn't have any problems this year. It did kind of fail and nearly overcharge my batteries, so something to be concerned about. So as far as more solar goes, I have 4 flexible solar panels that I'll be getting rid of. They've served their purpose, but flexible solar panels just do not last. A friend of mine sold me for very cheap a very good 300 watt solar panel, very large, but man, is that thing bringing the juice. So I plan on going to all hard, rigid solar panels. They just do a much better job, much longer longevity, and that'll all be going. I haven't quite decided if I'm going to put that all probably onto the Bimini, and I might leave what's up and over the dinghy davit without anything on there. Maybe put a rack up there for boards or for my stand-up paddle boards. Still a bit to be decided as I turn my sailboat into my ultimate boat. And it's kind of just a little bit of what there is that I want to do to the outside. I mean, there's everything else from, I could probably use a new paint job on the bottom, the tow rail and deck, or the tow rail on my boat. I could be, sanding and filing, in between each one so I don't cut any more lines. There's, the railing and lifelines could use probably some changing. There's a million little projects, but I'm a big proponent of, change what really needs to be changed and get your use out of your boat. I think too many people pour all their life savings and years of work and time into boats that, that then something happens, they're not able to go off and sail. For me, it's very important that more or less, no matter what I get done, I sail out, probably around March of 2021, probably March 1st if I can help it. That would be the goal. And then the last few here, there are projects that, I don't know if you can hear this, but I've got all sorts of lists written out. The helm station, I'd like to run some power to there and get a little bit of cabinetry going. A good spot just to have cell phones so they're not in the way. A good space so I can keep a windometer just so I can see what's going on pretty quickly rather than having to come down for it. Things like that. So just all sorts of little adjustments I'd like to do. I'd love to see if I can make the teak in my cockpit a little bit better. But again, I stand on it. It doesn't flex. It's good. I'm going to really get done probably the biggest things, which would be the Bimini, dinghy davit superstructure, the hard dodger, new sails, a new, probably new dinghy, and more electrical capabilities. Those are my main focuses. And that right there is quite a few projects. I do have a knack of getting ahead of myself with my list, so I don't want to avoid that. Moving on to some of the things that I've already done this year. So I actually have already done quite a few projects, quite a few little things kind of going on. I would say probably some of the most notable ones would be the fact that I did build the editing station in my boat, run USB power to several different places around it, added in cabinetries off on my side here, so I can store more cameras, have all my hard drives ready to go. And, also did some woodworking to, kind of cut into what was, largely a useless cabinet, I guess you could call it, underneath the editing state or the navigation station back when it was that. It went back probably a good 3 feet, which you just can't reach back that far. Anything back in there, you're not really going to use. And if you're not going to use it, what's the point of having the space? And the editing station only had, I think, like maybe a foot or 14 inches of leg room from where you'd be sitting on this very uncomfortable stool. So I cut into that and I added a Staples office chair, and that has been amazing. That gives me a place on this, relatively small 38-foot sailboat to be able to do all my own editing and then still have the dinner table, the salon area completely free for guests, for my other crew member, for whomever. Because this is an area that I just spent a lot of time in, so it's a pretty big project for me. Other things that I've already done this past season, I tore down some of the headliner that was getting kind of funky, and the headliner is kind of like in a car. It's like a carpeting or something that's just put over the ceiling so it's not bare fiberglass. Well, that's come down, looks terrible, and it can't be good for your health, so I've been tearing that down, and that's a terrible project. I put in a brand new custom bed up in the V-berth where I've been sleeping probably for the past 6 months or so. I'll probably continue to sleep up in that bed. Both the V-berth and the aft cabin, they're honestly both fine for me. I prefer the V-berth when it's a nice day out and calm, there's a little bit of breeze. I prefer the aft cabin when it's a stormy night. Just a difference in comfortability. As well, I added a new bed in the aft cabin as well. I figured either I'm sleeping back there or a crew member is, and either way, it wasn't cheap to get it custom done, but kind of a small price to pay. You consider, most people spend 8, I think I spend like 5 hours a night sleeping, but it's a large chunk of your life. You might as well get a good night's rest out of it. Besides that, there's kind of been some minor projects here and there, from, attaching kitchen knives right in front of the fridge to cleaning out the entire boat. I mean, I took everything apart. I wanted to know where everything was on the boat, found a ton of old, some of them were parts that wouldn't work for this boat, or just all sorts of things from the previous owner that I'm sure had their purpose, but I would never figure them out, and they were just taking up space. To even a few things that I just decided have no place on my boat. There was a oil lantern, a very nice one, but that's just not, I don't want open flames or something flammable like that on my boat. So I sent that off to my parents as a bit of a gift for them. Anyway, so moving on to the last topic here, that'd be me getting ready for the 2021 sailing and cruising season. First off, for those of you who don't know, the sailing and cruising season around the Florida area is generally considered to be about from March until June. You can expand that either direction, but that's really the prime time. The reason for that is it's not too hot, not too cold, there's no hurricanes. That's pretty much it. It really is the best time when you want to be out with your boat. Florida summer hasn't kicked in too much yet. The northerlies during the winter have calmed down. So you get this really nice kind of bit of both. So right now what I'm looking at for 2021, and I'll cover this more, I think, in the next podcast, where I plan to go, where I may plan to go, because my plans do change, and I do need to keep in mind that COVID will determine a lot of things. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but I've actually already been back to the Bahamas a few months ago, which I went a couple times, on somebody else's yacht, a motor yacht. I had a ton of fun. I got some incredible footage. Don't want to spoil too much. I may have ridden a hammerhead shark, but anyway. So I've already been back there, so I already know the procedure for getting a COVID test and how soon you have to be over there once you get the COVID test. And it's definitely not easy, but once you get over there, from everything I could tell, you're pretty much good to go like it's any other normal cruising season. They did change the price a bit, which is a bit of a bummer. I think when I was there last season, it was $300 for your cruising permit, and that lasted you, I think, 6 months or maybe more. Now it's $300 for 3 months, and if you want to do 3 months and 1 day, you need to spend another $300. So a little bit of a bummer, but again, when you consider how much we spend on the boat and the kite gear and the spear gear and all these things, really is a small price to pay for Bahamians or really any country to let you into their own country, to enjoy everything that's going on. And certainly I don't spend a lot of time near other people, so I get a lot out of just the country itself. But yeah, so the Bahamas probably would be my main place I'd like to go to for the next year. Again, it would give time for COVID to calm down, and it would give me a chance to visit some of the places that I'd already been to, friends I'd already made, some local Bahamians back there that I do miss, and it would be good to catch up with them. It's something I don't really get to do too often since I've been sailing. It's pretty rare that I've been able to go back to the same places that I've been once before. And there definitely is, there's a reason why a lot of people do that. I enjoy going to new places for sure, but there are some places I want to go back to, maybe go to them a little bit differently, anchor a little bit differently. Certainly bringing my kiteboarding gear to one or two, well, I probably won't name them because I want to keep them as a secret, but I don't know, we'll see. If you follow along the podcast, I'm sure I'll end up saying where they are, but some really good places to go spearfishing and to go kiteboarding especially. So I'm pretty interested to see how that will all turn out. As well, I want to do a bit more of an extended sail of the Bahamas. There's a lot of places I didn't get to. I didn't get to the Dementos and Ragged Islands. I also didn't get out to Cat Island, Long Island, and a few other places, just to kind of name a few that would be good to get out to and see. I mean, the Cooked Islands, Auckland's would be a really interesting place to go down to. And I believe that Pirates Wells and whatnot. There's all sorts of areas. I mean, I'm looking at Google Maps at the moment and getting a little bit of wanderlust going on right now, so I need to be careful of that, keep that under control. But I think the 2021 season is going to be a ton of fun no matter where I go off to. I'm certainly hoping there isn't another big spike with COVID and I have to go back down to the Florida Keys, but if that's the case, I'll go down there and I'll do it again and meet up with more people, hopefully do a little better than I did it last year. That's kind of the plan with all this, to improve myself as a sailor, improve myself as a spear fisherman, as a kiteboarder, as an ocean chef, and really to combine all of those into one thing would really be what I'd like to do. As well, I'll be taking on a new crew. I've already gotten quite a few really good applications, but we're definitely a ways out. I probably won't make a decision on crew until probably around January, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after, depending on who I get to meet and whatnot. And that may be one of my next topics. A couple episodes ahead of this one is how I take on crew, who I take on, what makes good crew, as well as I'd love to give some advice for those because I have been crew on other boats, both doing deliveries and doing leisure as well. And I can kind of give some interesting perspectives on crew that have come on for me because I've taken on, I think, 10 different crew members, only knowing one of them before they came onto the boat. And I mean, there's got to be 5 or 6 different countries through there. So yeah, it's something I really enjoy talking about. And with my last podcast where I talked about how I've been able to travel, it is something that, I mean, if you really want to go out there and see the world and see it in a unique way, go crew on a sailboat. There's plenty of people that would like to have you on there. You definitely need to cultivate a special, personality to say the least. In that you have to be gracious with things and that you still have to be kind of resilient as well. And in certain situations, know when to get off. I've heard some horror stories both on the captain side and on the crew side. So hopefully in a couple podcasts, we'll give you guys some heads up on that. So anyway, thanks for listening. Again, I'm Adventure Man Dan, and I'll see you on the next adventure. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and were either inspired, entertained, or maybe even you learned something, please consider supporting Adventure Man Dan on Patreon. You'll get exclusive early access to my YouTube videos and epic mentories, Facebook posts, and other content sometimes months before the general public, as well as tons of extra not seen anywhere else. And it can cost as low as $3, but helps me out tremendously. Also, if you haven't yet, check out my Adventure Man Dan YouTube channel for the full videos of my epic adventures, that I've edited so far. Bear with me as I continue to get caught up, but there's some great content on there already, as well as more to come. Or if you like to do a bit of reading, take a look at the official Adventure Man Dan Facebook page. There's tons of posts dating way back to the inception of Adventure Man Dan, and it's easily the most complete and accurate archive of my adventures so far. And if you still want more, why not follow me on Instagram at adventureman_Dan, where I post some amazing, albeit random photos from my travels around the world. And of course, you can always check out my website, www.adventuremandan.life, as a central resource for all my content and the best way to get a hold of me. Or if you're interested in literally joining the crew aboard AdventureBorn, I have a whole page on the website dedicated to just that. Go ahead and check it out. All right. Well, you've made it to the very end. Now get out and go start your own adventure.